Hi, welcome. On this video, I want to respond by way again of Kevin Murdaugh, the anti-dog trainer. Again, I just put out a couple videos which respond to whether or not he can truly answer the question I put forward in the dog training world as to what the source of the problem really is. And again, I put out specific information. Again, the two videos I put out are they get right to the point. I encourage you to watch those. I talk about what he doesn't address, okay, what he skips right over. And this is where on, again, I want to respond to this because, he responds to what I'm saying. And I talk about, what defines training? What are, how are the core ingredients I talk about? Um, influence and control, how they reconcile at the social level in a very specific way to change perception of dogs the right way. Okay, and this leads to, again, this whole thing with diminishment of unwanted behavioral issues. This is again, the whole foundation of this system. Okay, the method matters. Understand, you get into the actual method itself. That's where I talk about the language of the method. Okay, that matters. How it's reconciled, how it aligns, how it all comes together and holds together the integrity of the method, okay, for within the process itself, okay. And again, this is where we talk about getting the right information, both in like real time, okay. So this leads to this whole issue about, why trainers get blindsided; they don't see it coming, okay. So getting the right information in real time, but also in terms of, in terms of those core ingredients, how they reconcile through the moments, okay, how it all aligns to change the dog's overall decision-making process. Okay, so this system of training is very specific that way. And so when we get in this thing about, other approaches, and this goes into, because I'm going to talk about this a little bit further, because he tries to raise a couple points here, trying to set himself apart somehow differently. And really you end up in the same place. Understand, it's specific. Okay, so when you get in this thing about this type of, you know, um, Caesar Milan type of approach. Okay, and this is where I put out, videos. Okay, talking through all of it, showing it. Okay, the Showdown with Holly video, the Caesar Milan video, is a great example. Okay, of this whole issue about why you want to be connected. These trainers go on about the leashes, and why they want to just this whole thing about keep talking about the picture. I talk about off, these trainers go on so much about off leash, but the question is, well, when you get to the off leash part, can that picture be trusted? Okay, what is the foundation to establish that? And see, these trainers, they don't want to get into that but that's the critical piece of the puzzle. Okay, how do you actually, because you can have dogs responding, and this is the whole thing I get into about within the framework of response itself. What's the criteria to establish that those responses can be trusted, that the perception of dogs are changing the right way? What are these trainers using beyond just making assumptions? Well, that's what is happening, okay? Because the core ingredients I talk about to actually assess properly, but also to change, they're not reconciled, okay? They're not coming together. So the starting point is critical. So here, we're going to respond to some of this. I'm going to do a couple of videos on this because there's a bunch of comments left on this video, okay, which I'll get into the whole thing with these individuals that, again, want to get personal, okay, because I'm going to do another part two of this to talk about that part of it, okay, because you'll see it right in this thing, just the anger, okay, and the hostility, and wanting to get personal attacks, and entertaining all that. Right. So here's the thing: is I'm putting out information that is specific, okay, and it triggers off, right, all this anger and hostility. The question is why? If it's really about dogs, right? If it's really supposed to be about dogs the right way, about a better relationship, why do these individuals get so upset, okay, with this? Considering, here's the thing that's on top of it, considering the state of the dog training world. Look at around the dog training world. So you wonder why these trainers don't spend the time to to audit properly, to look at all the controversies, because they're all there. I go through my flipping the script series, and connect some dots. If it's really about dogs, Okay, but what shows no, this is not really about dogs. This is about the human, and not in a good way. Okay, hey, this should be about dogs. This should be about a better relationship. This should be about putting the spotlight on our role the right way. So here he says nothing like moving the goalposts. A little cheap shot, little Canadian cheap shot, right? Tags me, so I'm going to respond to it. Your question has nothing to do with the process. It's about the criteria. I even used your own answer, and somehow you claim I've skipped over important things that weren't even related to the question. Well, it's all about the criteria. It's how okay, those core ingredients, how are they reconciled? Okay, understand that that's what it's about. Okay, because that's where it begins, right? That's what it's about. I have no interest in making dozens of response videos. Well, you don't have, I mean, just move along, all right? You don't have to. In fact, those 2 videos I just put out, that's it, okay? I mean, really. In terms of, you can go watch them, very specific. I talk about that, but there's right in there. It's interesting. He just jumps right over because that's what these trainers do. I've discussed and shown all the specifics you're asking about, looking for, but you don't take the time to properly audit my work. Listen. I like the same thing I said. It only takes, 1 minute, okay, to audit someone's method, because it all starts at the beginning. Okay, understand that it's very specific. So, that's the thing. Okay, this isn't about a superficial thing here. This is where you get a lot of these even balanced dog trainers saying there's more than one way to train a dog. Right? Where do you think that statement comes from to begin with? It comes from appearances, right? So much confusion out there. But when you understand what a process is, you define it properly through a specific method. Well, those core ingredients are reconciled through a intentional, okay, interaction-based, there it is, method. There's no wiggle room, okay? There's no, I provide clarity, okay, as to what defines a process, how those, and I talk about this whole issue about a power play, right? I get into all of that. So, the audit part, right? You can go in, and I've offered up lots of examples, even with his method, okay, as to the gaps, the holes, okay, the the problems, and that's it. I mean, and then, here's the thing: these trainers understand a lot of these trainers have made the choice to to do what I never did. Okay, understand that I didn't do what these trainers did. I didn't run. I didn't take this idea, what they've done, and not step back and ask the questions. Okay, that's the thing. I mean, they had the same opportunity as individuals. They have the same opportunity I had, and like I said before, no one had to drag me towards the truth. Okay, that's a individual choice whether you want to, ask the question or you just want to run with this stuff, and then you can't respond. Right, you're in the defensive mode anyway. And here's the thing: is I'm putting the information out, and this is the thing about these trainers. Like they go on like it's all about them, right? It's like, listen, this is about, I'm putting information out for the public. The dog training community is a write-off, okay? I mean, that's may come off harsh, but that's the truth. I mean, because they've embraced, this idea that sets this counterfeit picture in motion for so many dogs and owners. They've done that. And so, when I'm specific as to, right, what the problem is, and this is I call it the question of the century, right? Put it out there. It's gonna generate hostility, right? So because they've aligned themselves with this, they've made that choice. They don't. This isn't about evidence and science and all this stuff. This is about, well, it is about evidence and science, but they've embraced. I call this the big lie, okay? Through appearances, okay? It's very deceptive. And people have embraced this, and look at all the blame shift. There's consequences. The consequences of the blame shifting on the dogs. You'll see it. It's an open door to set in motion a counterfeit picture. Okay, that's a fact. I lay it out. I lay it all out. He says the invitation to have respect is always on the table. Specifics. No, it's off the table. Okay, that's off the table when Kevin Murdaugh. Then you go look at all the videos, the cheap shots. You'll even see it here in the comment section. He embraces all these individuals that want to engage that way. He gins all that up. the people he embraces, the ones I banned off my channel. Okay, for that very reason. Okay, so I don't engage that way. That's about information. So, so all the cheap shots and all the wanting to get personal, all that stuff, just like I said, just like the same reason I didn't have a discussion with, once it hit that point, okay, with Christopher Upton, it's no different. Okay, just move. I mean, but they just don't just keep going, right? So that's it. I mean, because to have a discussion is about relationship, right? It's about kind of a mutual level of at least we can agree to disagree, but a level of not wanting to get so he's engaged at a level over and over again, trying to cheat, trying to use anything. You know, why did Cooper come back? You know, trying to take a couple people took my courses, right, and try to take that out of context. And I'm like, because the things that would bother me to say, hey, why do these people reach out? I want to help them. He don't care about any of that, right? It's just about trying to score some cheap shot points, right? Taking the Berg situation, the Dolly thing, I talk about that. Right, trying to do everything he can to try to gin up some sort of effort, but it's nothing to do with the information I'm putting out. It's about just getting personal attack, right, at that level. So that's fine. I mean, but you can't have it both ways. You can't go that level and then expect I'm going to have so I'm putting out video content, you know, I'm going to still respond to all this stuff, but I'm going to control it that way because I'm not going to go and have a conversation where someone's going to start to act that way. Makes no sense. You know, the opportunity was there. And this is where, again, you go back and watch that whole video series. It's all on my channel where the moment it broke down, it did get personal for him. Right? I started going that direction. So that's his choice. So, you know, I'm putting out information for the public, but also showing why all this stuff's happening. Okay, all the divisiveness, all the slander, the hostility, the personal attacks. You'll see it all through the dog training community. Okay, I mean, you see it all through. So it's like I'm putting out information. It's information specific, right? So here's the thing. Even when I go quiet and I'm just doing my training, putting up my regular instructional videos, individuals still come on to them and try to go at it at a personal level. It doesn't stop, right? Because it's this unsettled, you know, divisive thing that's happening. Well, that's interesting, right? It's like if these trainers had the answers, they wouldn't be doing that in the first place. Like really, based on just the level of subscribers I have. Now, don't get me wrong, my videos are taken off, especially on Rumble. You know, because I'm putting out information that, right, is okay. That's pretty interesting. Because I'm the only one talking this way about what's going on and why. Because you can't talk about, right, these trainers, they can't talk about that which they're in agreement with. I mean, because they automatically go into defense mode. They're not willing to say, okay, I'll look at it, and if there's a problem here with what I'm doing, I'll step back and I'll make the trade-off. That ain't going to happen. Okay, just understand that. So he goes on here, the invitation, okay, about such as social interaction, what is a power struggle is, and why I do not believe resolving. That's why the question doesn't apply to me. So he makes a thing about saying about learning based, right? All right, and so I get in this thing about balance, force free. You know, within the I even put a video about the quadrants, right? About again how the counterfeit pitcher is set in motion. Okay, through eliciting or generating response using a motivating agent. Okay, I even get this thing about the relationship, right? That control itself based on the contract you've already signed becomes its own motivator. So, so the jumping off point that way within the parameters of how learning's applied, that's a overt, you can say more obvious. It should be, right? But you get this thing about the whole kind of Cesar Millan approach, right? And I talk about this on the last two videos. Go watch them about the question of the century. So you say, well, this doesn't apply to me, right? But this is why he talks about the goalposts being moved, which they're not moved. I talk about the specifics of how the core ingredients are reconciled through a intentional interaction-based method. This is why he has problems with the leash, right? Touch, right? Certain interactions where influence and control are expressed through certain interactions. He has problems with the reactions themselves, just like the whole Jeff Gellman, piled on situation, right? So many of those examples out there, right? So he falls in line with all that for a reason, right? There it is, right there, right? So that matters, okay? How I talk about conversation intent. So again, there's certain themes here with how it aligns through how influence and control are specifically reconciled through a interaction-based approach, which falls in line to even how the leash and certain devices align. Okay, so the goalposts haven't moved. Just that he's trying to say, well, I'm different because I don't use treats or learning that way. No, it's still right. It's a type of spectrum. I talk about that. You know how that door just opens. Our influence and control part of, and I talk about these relational dynamics. Are they part of any absolutely part of any process? But how are they aligned in such a way to generate what needs to be generated, needs to happen, right? For that tachometer to move over, right? To come out with a intentional, predictable outcome, but also in terms of the information that you're receiving, okay, through a process itself, real-time information, very specific, okay? It's a very specific type of conversation. So what he's doing here, his method is like a conversation that leads off skips certain words, okay, jumps, right? There's no period at the end of that sentence, right? Or there's like, I don't understand what, so it's intent, right? It's about specifics in terms of intent with the dog understanding, right? That brings it into that specific power play type of interplay. But his does it that way. Okay, understand this is why the blindsiding moments, right? And it's the same problem. So for him to say, hey, he can put any client he wants up on his channel to sing praises. I can do the same thing. I just don't do it that way because it's, again, the same thing with marketing. There's a reason why I don't market the same way with these trainers, because it takes just the focus away from the human to me. Okay, so I'll talk more about that in some other video. Why, I can talk about what I've done all day long. Okay, but I don't do it for that reason. We can just no personal attacks or insults from my end. We discussed the leash as well. That's why the whole thing broke down, right? So, no, I mean it's the same thing. There's no interest. I have no interest in it because, what's the point, right? I'm just putting out information so he can move along. It's like all these other trainers, right? I mean, he can move along. You will likely call this invitation fake and phony. If so, it's not about fake and phony. It's about what's the point? Okay, I mean, he's already put it all out there as to, right? And he's in the same defensive mode, so it's not. I mean, the last two videos I did, for me, that's it. You can talk about goalposts and everything all day long. That's it. I mean, it's the same thing. So I'll do another video on the comments because that's the thing. You go in, right, and people say, "Oh, Dale, I mean, I'm not going to make it personal," but you go down here, right, and look at the comments of people, and it's brutal. Like this person, like saying I'm evil, all this garbage, right? Why doesn't he take the stuff off of here? Why is he engaging these people, right? And mocking and scoff and flip-flop them, right? Mocking and scoff and going on. He's just looking for what? What's he looking for, right? Why wouldn't you take all that stuff off of here, right? If you're like, because I can go in, it's public, right? So he's talking about both sides of his mouth here, right? If he wanted to have a respectful conversation, you wouldn't entertain certain people either. So it is what it is. I mean, that's what he wants to draw those people in, because it's like, so you can't have it both ways. That's just the way it is. If you go watch my videos, I don't get personal with these trainers, okay? If you go watch even my whole Flipping the Script series, go watch those videos. You will not hear me engaging in cheap shots and getting personal and engaging in certain tactics that he's engaged in, okay? Certain ways in terms of just trying to elicit anything, right? It's not about answering the question here, because you can't, right? It's a done deal. So it is what it is. So I want to respond to what he had to say, but go watch the two videos. I put out two videos to talk about the questions sent. They're very specific as to the problems with his method, but it's about everything. The dog training community, look at all of it. It's why the dog training community is the mess that it's in. Thanks for watching.